Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Unsponsored Guitar Reviews. Today we're going to demo the Solar EU AC6BR Rock. We're going to listen to how it sounds, discuss the pros and cons of this instrument, but real quick, if you don't have time to watch the whole thing, it's an amazing guitar, very light, sounds good, slightly neck heavy, but overall very great. The only downside, in my opinion, is that the fretboard edges and frets, they're not rounded. But yeah, let's jump right into it. Alright, there you have it. That's how it sounds. Now, let's talk about this instrument, the pros and cons. Now, the playability in this instrument is very good. It has a set neck, so it's very easy to go from the 1st fret all the way up to the 24th fret. The body is a swamp ash, so it is very extremely light, and the body is pretty thin too. In fact, the body is so thin and light that it does neck dive a little bit if you have a slippery strap like this one. If you've got like a leather strap, it's just fine. I guess it's also kind of worth mentioning, since it has the carved top, that it does like carve down, but then it like flattens out at the end, so it does like not dig into your forearm, but you do feel it. You get used to it like pretty quickly, but that is a thing. Alright, now on the subject of playability, one of the major cons of this instrument that was a bit unexpected is fretboard isn't rounded. So, you know, when you're playing here, you do feel the edge of it. And the frets too, like they're not sharp, but they definitely haven't really been rounded that much, if at all. When you're like sliding across the neck, it doesn't feel great. It's not terrible, it's not bad. You can get through playing a song. For this particular price point, you would kind of expect a little bit better, especially when there's instruments out there that are half the price that do it better. Like, it's not the end of the world, but you do notice it, especially if you've got your thumb more over the neck like this. Alright, now speaking of the fretboard is Richlite. Love Richlite or hate Richlite. I'm okay with it. At first it doesn't feel that great. You do have to play it in a little bit, and then it feels much more smoother. My guess is that they were going for a Richlite just for creating an ultra stable kind of instrument. And speaking of stability, it does in fact have the Evertune on it. The Evertune is pretty useful. I keep it in the bend zone, so the tension is going to be a bit higher than usual. The Evertune isn't magic. Like, over time it will drift out of tune, so you do got to check up on it every now and then. But you can get like 3-hour long sessions or like a day or two, and it'll stay in tune, which is really nice. You don't have to tune after every take. Super useful. It's starting to become really hard to go to any other instrument that doesn't have one of these. I do gotta say that even though the Evertune is keeping the strings like in tune, just keep in mind the rest of the guitar is made of wood, except the fretboard. It's Richlite. Strings can still like bind in the nut. The wood will still shift. This is true with any guitar with an Evertune. So you will have to, if you're keeping it like in the bend zone, for example, you're gonna have to occasionally retune, like readjust the tension, just so that it stays in the bend zone like you expect. Like, a lot of people say that there's a little like delay between bending, even though they put it in the bend zone, and I think that's just because it like drifts like that. Another thing to mention in terms of playability, I believe the string spacing and the neck, they're different dimensions than the typical 1 series or the 2 series with the Solar guitars. So you have to keep that in mind. I think it's a bit closer together. The neck is a bit thinner than the 1 series I have too. So that's just, it's different. Like, I do like the 1 series I have. I do like this too. They're pretty easy to go between. I'm more used to and comfortable on this one just because I also play a lot of Ibanez. But if somehow I only had to play like my 1 series for like a year or something, I'd be perfectly fine with that too. Okay, now let's talk about the sound. The sound is pretty good. These hand-wound Solar pickups, I mean, I'm a fan of the stock pickups on the Solar, so I think these sound pretty good. The split coils sound surprisingly good too. You know, when I first got the guitar, it sounded pretty okay. After a while though, like after like a month or two, it kind of, I guess it goes through, you know how they say like guitars have to forget they're a tree or something like that. I don't know, call me crazy, but it did sound better after like a month or two. These passive pickups just work. I don't really have to adjust the tone too much. It just naturally sounds pretty good. So I'm pretty pleased with how it sounded so far. I mean, other miscellaneous stuff, it does come with locking tuners. The locking tuners work as you expect. Pretty nice. Setting up the guitar is pretty easy too. I'm pretty used to setting up Evertunes by now. Overall, it's been a pretty hassle-free guitar. Now, let's talk about, is it worth it? Is it worth the price? Would I buy it again? It's a phenomenal guitar. It's amazing. It sounds good at everything I've used it for. It's hard to fault it except for that fretboard thing. Fretboard thing is getting a bit better as I'm playing it in, but that's still worth noting. So is it worth the price? That's tough to say because I don't regret buying it. I'm super thrilled with this instrument. I don't think actually I'm going to sell it or trade it or anything like that. Like overall, is it worth the price? I think if it was just a little bit less expensive, you know, like it had to get shipped over from the other side of the planet. I hate to say this, but I think it's just a little bit too expensive for what it is, even though it's incredible. I'll leave that up to you to decide if it's worth it for what you need it to do, for what you want it to do. I've been pretty impressed with how this plays. So overall, I'd say if this is in your price range, go for it. I definitely recommend this guitar. If this isn't in your price range, it's not the end of the world. You can get like a 1 series, like a Solar A series, and it would be just about like nearly as good, I'd say. For a fraction of the price, I'd say it'd play like almost as good. Like the neck would be a little thicker. Maybe some people prefer that. So overall, yeah. All right, so there you have it. Did I answer your questions about this guitar? If not, please leave your questions in the comment below and I'll get to that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching another episode of Unsponsored Guitar Reviews. Peace.